Live from the Metal Mayhem Studios in Rochester, New York.
We are gold. We are gold.
And heard around the world by metalheads just like you. This is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Heavy metal music.
Your weekly dose of metal music, interviews, album reviews, news, and more. Want to be part of the show? Send us a message through our website, metalmayhemroc.com, or hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. Search Metal Mayhem ROC.
It's getting nice and heavy.
Now, welcome our hosts, John the Vernomatic Verno and Metal Forever Mark.
We're doing our part to keeping it heavy. Welcome to the show. I want to thank you for finding us in any capacity that you did. iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, and like the guy at the beginning said, metalmayhemroc.com. I'm your host, John the Vernomatic Verno, and tonight we have a good one. My partner in metal crime, Metal Forever Mark, had a chance to catch up with Michael Sweet, founder, lead guitarist, and the frontman for the band Stryper. The band just released their 13th studio album called Even the Devil Believes. A couple weeks ago, we had a chance to play a few of the tracks on the Streaming for Vengeance segment on one of the shows, and band gets a bad rap for, quote, being a Christian band, but if you really sit back and listen to them, they kick some serious ass. And with that being said, let me introduce my partner in crime, Metal Forever Mark. How are you, Mark?
Vernomatic, how are you? Nice to talk to you as always about heavy metal. It's getting heavy in here.
It is getting heavy. So we got a good one tonight. Michael Sweet, founding member of Stryper, guitarist, really the heart and soul of that band. You had a chance to catch up with them about a week or two ago. And what'd you guys talk about? What was the interview covering?
Yeah, it was actually really exciting for me. I've just been a standing fan of the band Stryper, and you know they have a new album out called Even the Devil Believes. They've been a really, really active metal band from the '80s, and have just put out very consistently album tour cycle. So it was just great to be able to talk to him and take a little bit of a deeper dive into the new album. Kind of the genesis of it. Some of the things they went through during the writing process, which happened to coincide with, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. It was just really, really great. And I had a chance to not only talk about the new album, but also kind of go into, the hair metal, topic, them being a Christian band, and does any of that kind of detract away from the music. So it was pretty all in, and it was a great interview. I was really excited to get a chance to speak with Michael. I also had a chance to participate on a live streaming a ticketed event basically, and it was super awesome. I mean, all the band members were there. They had their manager there. They previewed 2-3 songs, and then Michael would talk about them, and then all the band members would talk about each of the tracks. And one of the things that was interesting is that, I don't know if you remember hearing the song Divider yet. It's actually the heaviest song by far on the album, it's almost like a speed metal song. And they said so far that's been the number one requested song from the new album, so much so they're making a video for it.
Really?
And it kind of goes to show you that I guess maybe the real diehard Stryper fans are very much into the heavier stuff. I don't know. I mean, I kind of maybe thought it'd be opposite, but I thought that was interesting to say the least.
So this streaming thing you saw, was that just the new one, the new album, or did it have something to do with the making of Soldiers Under Command that I saw they were doing?
So last night was about the new album only, and they previewed the new album and then talked about exclusively the new album. However, Michael did say that they plan on doing something similar for a lot of their past albums, and I think the next one is going to be Soldiers Under Command, which is super cool. And then he also previewed something else they're doing, which is they got into a soundstage not too long ago. They shot the whole new album. They performed it live and recorded from like 6 or 7 cameras. And they're going to put that out as like a special viewing event. And then they also did the same thing with the Soldiers Under Command album, where they performed the whole album front to back live on the soundstage with 7 camera angles. So I think they're doing some cool stuff, and it really makes it interactive. And again, without being able to go on the road, I think this is kind of a second best. And so I think you're going to see them doing a lot of stuff over the coming months, not only as it relates to the new album, but also some of these performances that they're performing these albums live. With Stryper, I went on that streaming event last night. Well, for two reasons. One, I knew I just talked to Michael, knew we had the interview coming up, so I kind of wanted to just hear more, of his assessment of the new release and the songs and all the band members' assessment. I also did it though because I am a fan and I wanted to hear the music, and I was doing it a lot out of curiosity, and I was thinking, well, it's 90 minutes and maybe I'll pop into it for a little bit and I'll go do some stuff and come back and watch some more or eat some dinner around it or whatever. But I really found myself watching the whole damn thing, like pretty much front to back. And I thought, just from a fan experience, I just thought it was really super cool. I mean, you kind of felt like you're chilling in the living room with all of them. They kind of told some stories, backstories. They took some Q&A. They answered some chats from the fans that were dialed in. I just thought that platform was super cool. And then going back to your other point, I was even thinking of a band like Iron Maiden where, they maybe they can't fly to 100 shows, but what if they do, one big production show, or maybe they string 3 shows together, or maybe they start tackling all these older albums and play them front to back. I mean, there could be some really cool stuff that comes out of this kind of technology kind of concept. And somebody even asked me the other day, well, is the older metalhead generation into the streaming stuff? Is it more of a younger kid thing? I think it's the same. Any age, I think we're all pretty savvy. Like I would tune into some of this stuff. So anyway, hats off to Stryper. I thought that was a cool streaming event. I think the new album's really current, really relevant. It stands up to any of the past stuff they've done. And I just think that if you listen to this interview and you're not a huge Stryper fan or not that familiar, or think they have been inactive for 15 years or so,
yeah,
I think you're going to, like you said, you're going to learn a lot, and maybe you're going to go back and check out some of their back catalog. But it's pretty interesting all the way around.
I want to play something right now. Metal Mayhem ROC correspondent, Southern Cal, had a chance to see the band last summer. They were doing a tour specializing in bands and music that inspired the band, and he has a little review. We're going to play this, and then we're going to come back. Mark's going to give a parting shot, and we're going to kick into the Stryper interview.
Clubs, sheds, arenas, stadiums. This is On the Road, your compass for live metal concerts.
We have Metal Mayhem ROC correspondent Southern Cal on the line. Cal, how are you, buddy?
Doing good, Vern. How's everything?
Good. Listen, we have an exciting interview with Michael Sweet of Stryper playing tonight. But you have an interesting story. You had a chance to see the Stryper band on tour. Why don't you tell us the story about it?
Yeah, this show took place back in June on the 11th in 2019. It was a local show here in Melbourne at our auditorium. After seeing them, what a bunch of great musicians, very solid, played great. I was actually very much impressed when they started breaking out some cover songs, mixed in with, of course, all their hits. They played some Kiss, some Van Halen, Heading Out to the Highway by Judas Priest, Heaven and Hell, Crazy Train. A lot of good stuff. And then, of course, all their hits, like I said, To Hell with the Devil and All She Wrote and God She Trusts. So very impressed by the show, I have to say.
I think I remember something about it was the greatest hits and covers tour, all the songs that influenced their generation. That's when now it's all coming back to me. But so your wife convinced you to go to the show. You go to the show. And I remember afterwards, you were blowing my phone up like, "Oh my God, it's like you found a new band." Would you go see them again?
I would probably go see them again, but I would hope that I would be the guy who would be hoping they were playing some more of these covers. When they played Panama, Vern, you were the first person I thought of.
Yeah, well, they're big Van Halen fans.
Oh, and they were knocking it out. The Heaven and Hell by the Sabbath cover was just. The guy can sing. Well, they
have a new one coming out, and the name of the album's Even the Devil Believes. So a couple of weeks ago, we previewed a couple songs on our Streaming for Vengeance segment, and it went over pretty well. So suggest you give it a listen. Maybe it's a new band you could really get into and look forward to going and seeing them live.
Oh, I'd love to see them live again. That would be for sure. Like I said, though, great musicians, all very able to play their stuff, and they were tight. The sound was great. It's about 1,000-seat venue, this place. It was probably about half full, so not too bad for a small little town here in Melbourne.
All right, well, Southern Cal, thanks for the input, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Vern, be good.
Take care, man. So there you have Southern Cal with his Stryper review. Mark, do you remember anything with that tour?
Well, first of all, just to comment on the cover songs that he referenced, Stryper does have a cover album that they released a few years back, and a lot of the songs he just mentioned actually was back in 2010, so I guess, wow, that's already 10 years ago. But some of the songs and bands he just mentioned are on this album, so some Priest, some Maiden, some Black Sabbath, Scorpions, Van Halen. So anyway, I would encourage any heavy metal fan to check out their covering album, because to his point, they're great musicians, and the recordings of these cover songs are pretty cool in and of themselves. But look, they were, again, just incredible. And I did talk to Michael about their live shows, and they kind of end with a prayer, which is really weird because you go from 1,200 fans fist pumping and singing metal songs to everything being quiet, and then they pray, and then they give you Bibles. So, and you leave the venue. Yeah. So it's kind of like you're on this big emotional high, and then you're kind of, kind of left with reflecting on what just happened. So, yeah, they're a great band. I love them. I think the fact that they've been called a hair metal band, or, they're known for a couple ballads, or, again, because they have the Christian faith, and some people maybe are not comfortable with that, detracts from the fact they're just a really kick-ass killer heavy metal band. Thanks, Vernomatic, as always, for the support and the production, and let's go. Here it is, Michael Sweet.
WLFE DB Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Metal Forever Mark, live from Rock Vox Studios here in Rochester, New York. My co-host, Vernomatic, is behind the switchboard today, so I'm taking this one on my own. But we're here today with Michael Sweet. He's the guitarist and lead vocalist, and I believe also founder of the band Stryper. So, Michael, it's a great honor and privilege to speak with you, and thank you so much for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and I'm just prepping for the release of the album.
Yeah, so I know you guys have already released first two tracks, Make Love Great Again, and then Blood From Above. I think Blood From Above was first, really heavy. The other one's a little more melodic, riffy. What can you tell fans what to expect, I believe, on September the 4th when this album actually drops?
Well, we've been working hard to come back to our roots, give the fans what they've been asking for and what they expect. All the things that Stryper has to offer that people expect from Stryper, and at the same time, we're trying to merge that with the present and add some modern twist along the way. We're never going to be a modern rock band, and we don't want to be, but we want to try to remain relevant in 2020 and release something that maybe it's going to bring in new fans, and we've been doing that for the past 13 years. We're seeing those new fans at shows, and it appears that the way that we're formatting everything and working everything out is working.
Yeah, and as it relates to new fans coming to shows, I know this is happening, I guess, in the heavy metal rock world in general. Like, is it generational, do you think? Do you think it's like guys like myself that maybe grew up with Stryper that are now bringing their teenage kids to the shows, or do you feel like it's a combination of that plus, young generation finding it on their own?
I think it's a combination of both, because I see the kids coming in their parents' shirt, and a lot of times I'll talk to these kids during the show, after the show, before the show, and I'll ask them that question, like, where'd you get your shirt? And they'll say, I got it from Dad, or I got it from Mom. But at the same time, there's a lot of young fans that are coming who say, no, I didn't get it from Dad. My dad doesn't even know who you guys are. I heard a song on the radio, or I saw it on YouTube, or I heard it on Spotify, and I became an instant fan. So it's a combination of both, for sure.
Was your intention and an original plan to write a new CD or album? I guess that's what we're calling them now. Or did you have other plans, and then all of a sudden, because you ended up in quarantine, like most of us, you decided to go on a different direction and write an album?
No, not really. I mean, we just stayed on course and stuck to the schedule. I mean, we had this album scheduled far and long before the pandemic. You know, it was on the books to start work on a new Stryper album a year ago, and it just worked out. I mean, I started writing the album in December. The guys came out in January, early January, to my house, and we rehearsed, went in and started recording mid-January, and by the end of our basic track sessions, the end of January, that's when we really started hearing a lot about cases in the U.S. and how it was spreading, and everyone started becoming more concerned. But it didn't stop the process of the album at all.
Do you think that the pandemic influence, I mean, I imagine always life and worldly events are going to affect your songwriting and the music, because I think initially when you started talking about this album, you had mentioned that maybe it's going to be a lot heavier, maybe a little darker, but now you're saying it's maybe a little more of a throwback to Soldiers Under Command. I mean, I assume life, worldly events influence writing. I mean, did the COVID-19 pandemic affect the writing at all? Did it go in different directions, or did it kind of stay true to what you guys had planned?
Yeah, it didn't affect it at all because, as I said earlier, it was written before COVID, before the pandemic. It is, when I say it's one of our heaviest albums, it still is in my mind. I mean, it's not a thrash album. It's not to a whole different level of heavy that's going to make fans say, okay, this is really different for the band. It's got a lot of those similarities of the albums of the past and even more recent albums. There's a lot of, it's kind of one in a series. And, a lot of similarities, but at the same time, it's got its own footprint and its own thing completely. There's the majority of the songs on the album are definitely very riff-laden, riff-heavy, a lot of guitars, big, crunchy, heavy guitars, and there's some real fast stuff. There's some mid-tempo stuff, and then there's one ballad on the album that's got more of a gospel, southern rock feel to it, which is unexpected for Stryper as well.
Yeah, I was talking to Vernon Maddock, who's normally our show co-host, just before your call here today, and I told him, I said, look, the last 3 Stryper releases, Goddamn Evil, Fallen, and No More Hell to Pay. I mean, those are all really heavy metal albums, really. A lot of heavy guitars and crazy riffs and awesome solos. So to your point, it sounds like it's somewhat in that same vein.
Yeah, this album's no different than those. The songwriting style, the production, the guitar drive, and it's very guitar heavy. I don't know if people realize that or recognize that, but we've always been a guitar band. It's not that we're not a drum band or a bass band or a vocal. I mean, we're based on, and our history dates back to bands that were very heavily guitar laden, and that's how we are. Bands like Scorpions and Thin Lizzy and UFO and and then you move forward into bands like Priest with twin guitars, and then obviously Maiden and then Van Halen. It's all those guitar heavy bands where the guitar parts and the guitar players were really out front and noticed, and that's how we've always been. But we just times 2. There's two guitar players in the band. A lot of people think there's just one, but there's actually 2, and we do a lot of stuff together.
And by the way, speaking of which, how's Oz Fox doing health-wise?
He's doing well. I mean, he's been dieting and trying to find ways to combat the tumors in his head, and he looks great. He feels great. He's probably going to be undergoing some sort of surgery at some point this year. That's the plan, and to just kind of take it head on and deal with it. I think up until this point, they were trying to find alternative ways to deal with it, and it wasn't or isn't working as expected. But he's in a good place right now.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, and we'll certainly wish him well and keep our eyes on how he's doing. But also, you had mentioned also, just briefly, not to get too off topic on some things, but Judas Priest and Rob Halford, the metal god, and he just had his birthday this week, and I saw you mention that he influenced your vocal style heavily. And look, your vocals are also incredible. I mean, you've got great range and power, and I think the new track that's out, you can see all that. So do you just want to speak on that vocal side of it as well?
Yeah, he's always been a big influence on me, and more than people may realize, and certainly more than he would probably ever realize. I'll never forget when I was going to school, my sister was driving me in her Vega station wagon to high school to drop me off. And on the way there, I heard Priest on the radio. And I'll never forget the feeling that I had, as if it were yesterday, of being just completely blown away and inspired instantly to want to be a better singer. Because I heard him sing, Rob sing, and it blew my mind. I thought, wow, okay, I've never heard anyone sing like that. I want to sing like that. And I started working on my voice, and I didn't have a high head voice, upper range developed, and a scream per se, and I just had my lower range, and I started working instantly on my upper range and my vibrato and delivering things with a little bit more intensity. And it's funny because that's probably one of the things the haters out there, don't like about my voice is the upper range and the vibrato. And say I'm too operatic, and yet in the same sentence they'll say they're big fans of Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. And, they're very operatic as well. Rob Halford is, and so is Bruce. And I those are two of my big influences. I don't really sound anything like them, but they've definitely influenced me along the way tremendously. So I give kudos to Rob anytime I can, because he's just such a big influence. He actually came on stage and jammed with us in Canada as well back in 1991. We were performing, and he came up, and they were performing in town the next night, and we did Breaking the Law, and he sang it.
That's awesome. But did you covered that song on that album, The Coverings, correct?
We sure did. We covered that song, and the reason why we covered that one is because a lot of thought went into every song that we covered. Not only the songs that we grew up on and that we love personally, but also the songs we were always thinking about the songs that the fans would like as well. And obviously, Breaking the Law is a big smash for Priest and a straight ahead tune. And we could have gone in a different direction and done something like Sinner or Ripper or Victim of Changes or Exciter. I mean, there's so many others we could have done, and maybe someday we will, because we're going to do a covering too at some point. Nice. But we played it a little safer and covered Breaking the Law. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all that. Before we get into, by the way, I was going to mention we previewed Blood from Above on our show about a week or two back, and I think that track actually opens with a crazy high-pitched vocal. You rip right into the song. So we got a lot of good positive fan reaction from that, by the way. So that was pretty cool. By the way, before we leave the new album, because I do want to just try to squeeze in a few other general questions, I suppose, as it relates to Stryper. But where can fans go to purchase this CD and buy the album, and where should they go to get it?
Well, I mean, it should be available. I'd be surprised if it's not. It should be available anywhere you can buy music.
And most people can find you just your main official site is just Stryper.com, correct?
Stryper.com,
yep.
And then there's michaelsweet.com as well, and then there's the Facebook pages, which have a store on each Facebook page. It takes you right to the merch links and sites. And then there's, of course, Instagram and Twitter and all that good stuff. We're all over social media, and we try to stay pretty active on social media.
You mentioned you were kind of tweeting about this and talking about this even before the COVID-19 pandemic, that it is getting a little bit more challenging and difficult for bands from a business perspective, from a revenue perspective, meaning, streaming like Spotify, they only share a small percentage of the revenue. I mean, a lot of people still like to buy the product, but, buying old school CDs and records and, like you even said, cassettes is, getting more difficult, and you can't tour as much as you used to. So what do you want fans to kind of know, just business-wise, how that's affecting bands like Stryper these days?
Well, whenever you say anything against, what's popular and what's working in our society right now, and according to modern technology, you run the risk of being scrutinized and almost coming across as a negative Nancy or a Debbie Downer complainer. And it wasn't meant that way at all. It's just a fact that, Spotify isn't the best format for bands and for musicians and writers. It's just not. That's a fact. When you compare it to the past and the way bands made a living, which was primarily based on royalties and mechanicals, that's not the case anymore. And we have Spotify to thank for that. And it's not Michael Sweet giving his opinion. It's just those are the hard facts. And, it may be good for the CEO of Spotify, but it's not good for the musicians. And that's what I was trying to convey. But, my words aren't going to change the way people listen to music. It's advancement. It's the way it is. And there's nothing that can really be done about it, especially at this point. It's at a point where it's too far gone, The hard copies that used to sell back in the day, back in '86, you compare them to hard copies today. I remember releasing "To Hell with the Devil" and it selling 100,000 units very quickly. Now we're very fortunate and blessed if we can sell 10,000 units very quickly. And some bands, 1,000 units very quickly. So it's not about buying the hard copy and holding it any longer. It's about streaming it. And it's a bummer because you go and you work and you invest 3 months of your life or 4 months of your life and a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort, blood, sweat, and tears, only to have people stream 2 or 3 or 4 songs from an 11 or 12 song album. And it's very deflating for bands and frustrating. And then when bands voice that opinion, they get tagged as complainers and not wanting to follow along with the times. And it's like, well, duh, of course not.
Yeah, it's really interesting, challenging times for sure in that regard. So I want to just mini pivot and then feel free to stop if you got to jump because we're going to try to keep this on timeline. But I'm going to lump up maybe a couple questions into one. It's and this one actually came from a fan on our Facebook page, which, it has to do with your, the Stryper being a Christian band, having a Christian faith. And, the question was, how do you keep that centered ground, live in the rock style, the life on the road, touring, and then, in conjunction with that, do things like a global pandemic, and I know you've had other life crises as everybody does, but, does it help you question your faith, or does it make your faith even stronger? So can you just speak to the Christian aspect of the band?
Well, I mean, there are things that happen in my life that question my faith. One of those things in most recent times was 10 years ago when my wife passed of cancer. And here I am serving God, so to speak, quote unquote, however you want to term that. And then, my wife gets cancer. And it was a moment in my life that made me question God. It made me think, what that rhymes with truck,
Right.
And I'm out there mowing the lawn, crying out to God, just saying, what's going on here, But as I, moved on, as life moved on, and I got through that incredibly dark storm, I realized that, these things, as you said earlier, they happen to everyone. Everyone is vulnerable. Everybody has these moments in their lives where they question God, where they question life itself. And that's what helps us to grow and to learn and to become better people and stronger people. So, I met my wife, Lisa. We've been married for 10 years, and I feel like God sent her to me really quickly. And she truly is a godsend. And I don't think I'd be here if it wasn't for her. And she's helped me through so much, and she's such an amazing person. And, those moments have altered my life. And at the time I felt in a bad way, but now that I look back and reflect, I realize in a good way. Because I view life differently, and I've learned a lot through it, and I feel I've gotten stronger and more determined and harder worker and a better provider and just more focused. So, I just want to encourage anyone out there who is going through any type of a situation that feels like it's life-changing or threatening, that, stay focused and stay encouraged and, don't lose hope. Stay hopeful, because things change. We go through seasons and storms, and those storms eventually pass.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I'd known about the passing of your wife, and I wasn't, sometimes people don't want to go there or talk about things like that, but I think you tied it in perfectly to, like you had mentioned, things that are happening even present moment, worldly that we're all dealing with. So, this one, Vernomatic and I, we talked about this on our show the other day, and I'm not a musician, and I've tried to play Stryper songs on guitar, and I can't even try, so I give up on that. But anyway, this tag, and I guess this even ties into, like that track, Honestly, that was one of your first big hits, and I know you mentioned the high, vibrato, and people thinking you might even be a female singer at first, and then, in conjunction with that, being known for a ballad, but also this hair metal tag that gets thrown out there that, I know it's, the style and the look that happened way back in the 80s when bands like Stryper were, first around. But what is your opinion on that tag? Does it frustrate you? Does it irritate you? You just kind of accept it for what it is? Because I think it kind of cheapens the musicianship and the music, in my view, but you're the musician.
It does.
So
it really does. Because when I think of hair bands, I think of Poison. And that's not the slam Poison, but we're nothing like Poison in any way, shape, or form. So when we get tagged hair band, it's definitely disconcerting. It's not an accurate description of the band, I don't think. We're a hard rock metal band. Yeah, it just so happens that we had a lot of hair, and the hair kept getting higher, and like any other band from that era. I mean, at one point, Guns N' Roses was a hair band. Let's be real. I mean, every band from that era at some point was a hair band, except the guys that didn't have hair. And, it just, and then the clothing too. It was all about the clothing and the costumes. And Ray Brown was the guy that made them for most bands, Whitesnake, Bon Jovi, you name it. And, I don't want to say we got caught up in that, but we were part of that era. And with that comes labels. And then you add to that the Christian label. And, I always thought it was very funny and very odd to label music or a band Christian just because they sing about Christ. Because, all the bands that sing about Satan aren't labeled satanic bands. They're just labeled metal bands. Slayer, pick any band that has pentagrams and sings about the devil, and they're not called, so what does it feel like to be a satanic band? But with Stryper, because we sing about Jesus, like, what does it feel like to be a Christian band? And that tag is always thrown around so loosely, and I've never liked it. I feel that it limits what we do and continues to do so. And I've also said many times, and I'll say it again, the limitations are wide, and, there are many. And it's like when I walk in a store when our album comes out, and you go into a store that still sells hard copies, and you say, yeah, I'm looking for the new Stryper album, and the guy points to the back corner of the store and says, oh, it's back there under the Christian section. And then I'm standing there looking at the new Judas Priest album at the front of the store on display. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about with limitations.
And labeling, all the above.
Yeah, we're a metal band.
Yeah.
We're a metal band, and we should be at the front of the store under the same display as Judas Priest. Why shouldn't we? So that's what really frustrates me and makes me want to change things. And then fans who cling and hold firmly to the Christian tag, when they hear me say that, they get offended. Yep. And they think that I'm basically dissing and walking away from our Christian faith, and it's not that at all. I mean, how have we, in one way, shape, or form, walked away from our Christian faith? Our albums are as bold as you can get and as Christian as you can get in terms of lyrically. But man, I just don't like the Christian tag. I think it sucks. I think it's silly. I really do. Christian metal. It just, come on. We're a metal band.
I think I've actually gone to stores and taken your Stryper CDs from the Christian section and moved them over to the rock metal, just for what it's worth. They probably got put back by the store clerk, but
it's so interesting. I mean, people are smart enough to figure out what's Christian and what's not. They don't need a label to tell them. Sure. That's just my opinion. I don't know.
I will say, I've got one more I wanted to ask you, but I will say that I've only been to a handful of your shows, unfortunately, because sometimes, you don't tour all the time and don't hit all the cities all the time. But, when you guys do that prayer at the end and you shut down like a raucous 1,000 rock and roll heavy metal fans and it ends up being dead silent and you guys are praying up there, it is really powerful. I would like to add, by the way, it's pretty awesome.
Hey, man, I tell you, there are very few people in this world that would argue that prayer is bad, and that would say prayer is bad. Most people welcome prayer. No matter what you believe or who you believe in, most people welcome prayer, especially in times of need. So when we end the show with prayer, it can be the most powerful moment of the show. Because there are people in the crowd who are hurting. There may be someone in the crowd who's losing a loved one, or who has terminal cancer, or who has just lost their job, or they're an addict, a drug addict, or alcoholic, and maybe they need prayer, and they came there with the hidden burden of, man, I wish I could get prayer. And then when we say a prayer for them at the end of the show, maybe it's the highlight of their night.
No doubt. Well said. Awesome. Thank you. Hey, just the last one I was going to ask you, then we can wrap. There's this, a lot of these, rock, heavy metal legends like yourself and Stryper and the other bands that we kind of had mentioned already through the show, like the Metallicas and the Maidens and the Priests of the world. Do you feel like there's at some point like a passing of the torch or a passing of the guard, or is there an obligation to help young bands like aging Peyton Manning might help out a young quarterback, for example, as a sports analogy? Or do you think that it's just, hey, you know what, everybody's got to make it on their own like you all did? What's your kind of sense to that? Because I feel like, where is that next generation of hard rock and heavy metal bands that they're going to carry this thing on?
Well, those that are worthy deserve, support. And what I mean by that is, take like Todd LaTorre, for example, who stepped into the Queensryche frontman position. Incredibly talented guy. At the time when he joined Queensryche, he was younger, and up-and-coming guy that no one really knew a lot about. And Todd deserved support for many reasons, because he's got the heart and he's got the talent. And, it broke my heart to see some of the fans just tearing him to shreds early on when he first joined the band, because, they're diehards and they don't want change. And, they want Jeff to be the singer always for Queensryche. And, I got behind Todd and gave him 100% of my support, and still do. There are guys like that who are up and coming, as you said, to pass the torch to. And we need to really get behind them. There are some other people that, they just don't have the goods, so to speak. And a lot of people are supporting them, and I'm sitting there kind of scratching my head like, yeah, I'm not really getting it. I'm not getting that same feeling when I heard Rob Halford for the first time. I'm approaching 60, and my time left to do this isn't, 20 or 30 years, or maybe 10 years. I don't know, man. I never know. We don't know what tomorrow may bring, and all too well, we see this on a daily basis. That our time is precious here on earth. So, when I'm gone, and when Stryper's gone, we need another band to kind of fill our shoes, and I'm sure that band is either out there now, or forming now, or prepping for the cause. So I'm there to get behind them for sure. Absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome. And and then it's a whole other topic of, different players coming into bands that keep bands going, like a Richie Faulkner, for example, who just, came into pre-sign. Look, you even filled in for Boston, right? So, I mean, it's kind of like
I love Richie.
Yeah.
Love Richie.
Yeah.
Richie's one of my favorites, and is such a true perfect fit for Priest. And then Boston, that was a short-lived run. I did one tour, and I was in the band for 4 years. There were a lot of high expectations and dreams of me continuing on and recording with them. I started writing songs and taking them to Tom, and he really loved what he was hearing, and there was a bright future. And then everything changed, and I realized that wasn't going to work out.
Yeah, well, I thought you did a remarkable job in that band as well. And so, Michael, thank you so much for your time. In closing, is there anything else that you just kind of want to add, or anything that we didn't touch on as it relates to the new album coming out on September the 4th? Just anything else before we wrap today's discussion? Well, I mean, the album's coming out September 4th, which, as we speak right now, it's a week away. And a new video, Do Unto Others. Really excited about that song. It's probably my favorite song on the album for so many reasons. And the video is powerful. It's a music video. We're in it. So it's not another lyric video. We shot that. The guys came out here and quarantined at my house, and we shot 2 videos, one for Do Unto Others and then Divider. And then we also shot 2 live on-demand albums, one being the new album in its entirety, the other being To Hell with the Devil. And the new album on demand will be coming out in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And so excited. We figured if we can't bring a tour to people, we can bring a live show to their living rooms. So it's really cool, man. We're excited, and we've got so much planned, and the future is incredibly bright. And we're so happy that we're able to do what we do at the level that we're doing it at. That's great. Well, Michael, thank you so much again. That was Michael Sweet from the band Stryper. Check out their new release on September the 4th, Even the Devil Believes. And, Michael, we wish you all great success, and thank you again for taking time with us today. We greatly appreciate it.
Hey, buddy, thank you so much, man. Much appreciated as well. And God bless you, and hopefully we'll see you out there on the road soon, okay?
Awesome. Likewise. Thank you so much.
Metal for Life. Thanks for listening to Metal Mayhem ROC. Check out our websites at metalmayhemroc.com and metalforever.com for information on upcoming concerts, podcasts, archives, and all sorts of info. Please like, follow, and share with everyone, even your non-metal friends. Catch us next time on WLFE DB Radio.